So earlier this week, I was at work and I was listening to the radio, and there's a radio show called Brook and Jubal in the morning. And listeners can call in and they can ask that they do a phone tap or a phone prank on their friends for various things. Well, it just so happened that they did a prank where they were acting as like a employee tracking firm or something like that, and they called the receptionist asking for the manager, and the manager wasn't available. So the receptionist, who was the victim to their phone tap, asked to take a message. And the radio host acted as if he was the tracking firm and basically was trying to relay a message for a specific computer for an employee that was doing unethical things during the workday. So it's kind of funny because I knew I was going to be doing this speech on employee monitoring and the ethical perceptions that sit in place, but the radio host, called her out on actually taking work time to do something that's profitable, such as Etsy. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Etsy or not, but it's basically a company that people can join or whatnot and then sell their products and make a profit off of it. Well, anyways, when he called her out on this, she of course kind of got thrown back, and she started looking at herself like, oh no, I messed up or whatnot. And then he called her out on Facebook, and she was like, no, I don't do that much Facebooking at work, and she started getting a little defensive. But when he really attacked her about the Etsy, she got real defensive also with like, I can't let my boss know about this. I'll get in a lot of trouble. I'll do anything for you not to report this to my boss. So she automatically knew that she was doing stuff wrong, and that she was not doing what she was supposed to at work. Well, at the end of it, they told her that it was a prank call and everything else, so she probably felt a little relieved. But myself and probably a few other thousand people in the United States know that this one individual messes around and then does personal things during their workday. So with that, we're going to answer two ethical dilemmas and then we're going to talk a little bit about their implications. First off is, do employers have the right or ethical obligation to monitor their employees? And what are the expectations to protect the firm's interests? And also, do the employees have rights when it comes to their privacy, and what are their expectations with that privacy in the workplace, and some of the implications in that realm of things. There was a segment back in 2013 on PBS in San Diego talking about privacy rights versus employee tracking. And right off the back, they started out and said that companies have rights to monitor the use of their property, their computers, their cars, their telephones, you name it. And they have a right in their best interests to do these things to try to protect their quality assurance and the conduct of their employees, and make sure that their employees are following their things such as the code of conduct and other visions or whatnot that the company sets forth. Laura Hartman, who wrote a journal on technology and ethics and privacy in the workplace, suggests that employers track their employees because they want to make sure that employees are making the right decision, that they're taking the right steps in the decision-making process to ensure that they're acting in the best interests of the company. Along with that, go back to that segment, KPBS News in San Diego. The guest on there was Professor Don Eaton, or I'm sorry, he's an attorney Don Eaton, uh, and he's an employment attorney, and he said that another reason that employers track employees is to ensure that they're being productive and that no misconduct is taking place that's going to hamper the employer, and also mainly just to protect waste. So employees have tons of rights, okay? It all goes back to the Constitution of the United States and our Fourth Amendment rights. The U.S. Constitution protects our rights as an individual to be secure in our persons, our house papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure. Now, go back to Laura Hartman, who wrote the Journal of Technology and Ethics. She reminds us that that right only applies to the intrusion of our privacy by the government itself or the state. And then she goes on and explains that when it comes to businesses in the private sector, there's a fine line between the Constitution and the common law, and that the common law would apply to your rights and to businesses doing taking part in monitoring activities when when you haven't signed a disclosure agreement or some sort of form that states that you know that the employer is going to watch or track your usage of their devices. In of itself, also Professor Alder, who is a professor at the University of Las Vegas, has stated in his published journal in 1998 that the main criticism to employer monitoring would be the dehumanizing of their workers. It invades their privacy and increases stress and invades Fourth Amendment rights, along with hampering that work-life balance. Now, I don't know if I quite agree with all that. I feel like that integrity goes a long way, and that leads into the employee ethical implications of protecting their rights in the workplace. If employees need to follow the golden rule, basically do upon others as you wish upon yourself. If you owned a business, I don't think you would want all your employees messing around, doing what they're not supposed to do during their work time, because that takes away from your bottom line. Also, employees need to understand that integrity goes a long way, and with that, as long as you have integrity, then if the employer is watching you, it shouldn't be that much of a big deal. I get it. We all get nervous when a police officer is behind us in the line of traffic and we're doing everything we're supposed to do. We always get a little bit nervous, and it increases that stress. To go back to stress, and Professor Alder, and what he says there is it's going to put a little bit of pressure on you, kind of like with this speech. So, in summary, there's two things to when it comes to the ethical dilemma of employee tracking, and that is employers have a right along with the employee and their rights. However, these things are going to change as time goes on and society changes. post 9/11, for instance, we're kind of used to the whole surveillance and the security and the watching, and us as a society here in America are adjusting to that, to the new norm. Employers can monitor and surveil employees within any kind of agreement as long as the employee knows that it's being done. It's when the employee does not know it's being done, the monitoring, that it becomes a big issue and becomes a legal issue. So go back to Laura Hartman, who was the author of the journal Technology and Ethics. She puts ethics in a perspective that I appreciate and I kind of grasp onto, is perception defines one's ethical meaning. Okay, so somebody's perception of ethics as a whole and what is right and wrong defines if the employer is watching them, if that's wrong to that person, or their coworker next to them might not see anything wrong with it. So it really comes down to being a personal issue more than a grand issue amongst all society. So again, I could have an issue with my employer watching me do maintenance on an airplane because I'm an aircraft mechanic, and my buddy next to me might not affect him the same way. So it's all based on perception.